That's the bottom line. You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Rise to the top, oh yeah.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Hard work pays off. Dreams come true. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do.
How we doing, guys?
Good evening, gentlemen.
What's up?
I got a little trigger finger going here, and so I'm just finishing things up quick. So,
Little back-to-back action from the bottom line.
That's right.
yeah, but Brett, you might want to check that. I think I hit it, but you can check it out if you want to.
Okay.
Anyway, so today was the big day, fellas. The day that everybody's been waiting for. And so we finally got to see the schedule. And before we dive into that schedule, I just thought I'd bring up some dates of note here. We've got the fan appreciation days going on here. Let's see, let me put that up here real quick. Upcoming dates for the fan rallies. I think we have a couple going on. At the end of January, we got Louisville and Houston.
That's correct.
And we're followed by St. Louis and DC the following day. I'll be there.
I'll be in the Houston one, so we've got 2 covered out of those so far.
Yeah, we got 2 covered. Then we got one on the 5th in Orlando, and we got 2 on the 7th. I'm sure Brett will be at the one in Birmingham. So we'll be well represented at those. Looking forward to that.
Cool.
So let's bring out the schedule, of course. And just initial thoughts, KJ, on the overall schedule. What was your kind of takeaway of initially when you first saw the schedule?
I think just I'm going to say aesthetically, even though that's probably not the right word. When I initially viewed the schedule, the thing that stuck out to me the most, I think, was the number of back-to-back games we have, kind of almost league-wide, at least, if you will. It ranges by team, of course. Obviously, you got some that only have like 1 back-to-back game, and then I think DC carries the most for the season with 3 series, head-to-head series, back-to-back to back-to-back. So that's a first-time thing. I think that it's occurred in the history of like spring ball as a whole. Brett can counter me there if I'm incorrect. I know we've had back-to-back games before, but for them to be this abundant, that was just kind of visually stuck out to me. I would say that much when I first saw the schedule get released. I think they've got some good opening matchups. Obviously, the Dallas-Houston game to kick off week 1, as well as the kind of battle of the ponies, for lack of a better term, against Birmingham and Louisville. I think are well set games. Also, I mean, I can't dog on DC and the Battlehawks, because we all know that's been a budding rivalry for at least a full season now, if not longer. They always seem to play each other hard with, Jordan Ta'amu's history with both teams and similarities there, both being kind of routine, almost playoff attenders almost every season. So, outside of that, I would say it's a good balance. It's a good roll through the schedule. And I mean, I think they did a good job of at least trying to get, obviously, every team the opportunity to play one another. The unique thing that we're obviously folks may not realize or remember from last season is that we don't have a divided divisional structure anymore within the holistic league as a whole. So you're not going to have the requirement to play a specific 3 other teams twice a season. Those double up games or back-to-back games that I mentioned can be essentially with any of the other 7 teams in the league for each respective team. So that's a different kind of swing on things than what we've experienced in years past.
So, Brett, was you able to, what's your gut thought on why this year they're kind of featuring the back-to-back games? I mean, we have 6 of the 8 teams. They have 2 back-to-back games in their schedule. The other two, Birmingham and Dallas, only have 1, but otherwise there's a couple back-to-back games in each of the schedules. Have you been able to figure out what they're trying to do there?
Well, I'd heard a rumor a month or 2 ago that, they were struggling with the schedule, and people got to understand that's been one of the biggest things about spring football, or the, the complaint by spring football fans is the scheduling. But everyone's got to remember, we are no stadium's first team. Sometimes we're the 3rd or 4th team in said stadium, and we're definitely, with all these soccer venues, we're playing second fiddle. So you've kind of got to get it when you can type scenario. I'd heard for what, like I said, a month or 2 that the Dallas Renegades was only going to have 4 home games this season, and as opposed to 5, the regular 5 and 5, which that didn't happen. Obviously, they did a lot of juggling. That's got to be one of the most trying things about spring football is the scheduling. And I know that Moose brought that up numerous times. Russ Brandon brought it up numerous times. It's just trying to get in where you fit in, like I said. And Birmingham, on the DC game, they originally released the schedule, and the schedule was messed up, and they had to come back and release it 20 or 30 minutes later and fix it. And the Legion that shares Protective Stadium with Birmingham, the local soccer team, they went ahead and moved their game. So there's going to be issues like that, unfortunately, whether we expand to 10 teams, 12 teams, 14 teams, once the league starts turning a profit. Things that we're still, until we have our own stadiums, we're going to have to kind of wait until the soccer teams get their schedules out. And, like Birmingham, we don't have a home game till week 4. I know a couple of weeks has got to do with a monster truck thing that they have every year at Protective Stadium, concerts, things of that nature. So, unfortunately, I'm not hating on the league. I know it was not intentional. They're just really doing the best they can. And people need to be a little bit more understanding about that. I know I saw a lot of questions and comments on Facebook and X about that. But, again, this is a new league. It's spring football. What have we had spring football now, fellas, since 2019, which is pretty impressive. Obviously, there's a market for it, but there's still going to be some trying aspects of it, which is definitely going to be scheduling more than anything. And Rapoli did mention online a couple months ago that moving forward, they were going to try to start the season sooner than late March. So we'll see if he sticks to that, and if we can get closer to after Super Bowl start next year.
Yeah, I'm looking at these opening weekend games, and what's kind of exciting for me as a Battlehawk fan is the fact that this is the first time I think since inception that St. Louis has had a home game on the opening weekend. I've always had to go down to Ballpark Village and take it in on the big screen on week one. So we finally get a home game for week one, and they put us against our biggest rival, DC. So I mean that should be a great ball game. I thought it was nice that Louisville starting the season off at home against Birmingham. I wonder how many Birmingham fans will travel to that game. What is Louisville from Birmingham?
You know me, I drive for a living. Basically, it's a long ways for me now. Not for KJ, but I'm trying to get one of our boys from here in Alabama, Jay, to fly with me to Louisville. I told him, I said, "Don't worry, man, we'll be good. I'll hold your hand. You'll be all right."
Y'all can tandem drive with Brett. There you go.
I would much rather fly straight from Birmingham, which is 45 minutes from my house, to Louisville, take an Uber, and roll on. But some of you guys, this 8, 10, 12, 14 hours driving, I'm not Chevy Chase in National Lampoons. I might be as hot-headed as Chevy and as goofy, but I'm getting too old for riding the road like that.
Yeah, we got a great matchup too. Houston and Dallas. I'm sure they're trying to establish, those rivalries and keep them going. And of course, Houston and Dallas is. What's the distance between them, KJ?
It's a good if you're doing everything civilly and minding your P's and Q's. It's between 4 and 5 hour drive, so it's
Okay.
It's probably one of the longer distances between teams, and obviously not the longest if we're talking the furthest geographic opponent to the next, but definitely a lengthy commute. I'll say that. So the nice thing, I think, to your point with Houston and Dallas, and I'd even say, honestly, DC and STL, because they've been all four of us have been here since the beginning, is that when it comes to Houston, Dallas, that's just a cultural, geographic rivalry, even if you go beyond sports. So I don't think they have to do much there to bolster or, help foster a rivalry. It's going to be there no matter what branding of the teams are. And then, for DC and St. Louis, like I said, I think they have the history there with, having sharing time with the same quarterback if you go back to year one. And then the fact that they've played each other so well and made routine appearances both in and out of the playoffs, they'd have an established history.
And so before we dive into team-by-team schedules, let me put
Guys, I love this week one schedule. I know I cut you off, Ed, and I'm sorry, but this week one schedule. Hey, just like Ed, were you not in D.C. when D.C. and St. Louis got in that big fight at the end of the game 2 or 3 years ago?
I was there for sure. In fact, the guy behind me over here that's in my Ed's U in the Lou Hall of Fame, Kevin Atkins, he was one of the guys involved in that. There was a couple other guys that had to serve 1-game suspensions at the end of that game. Yeah, it was you couldn't have asked for a better game initially between those two, and it kind of helped spawn the whole rivalry between the two, and it's never gone away.
Right.
Yeah. And Birmingham and Louisville?
Yeah.
I mean, Rapoli more than likely is going to be in Louisville that weekend. You've got probably the most famous spring football franchise right now going to Louisville. Rapoli named them. It's, home of the Kentucky Derby, the Sport of Kings. And then the one that's really sexy to me is the two new teams, the finale of opening weekend. That's the game there. You just don't know. You got Ted Ginn Jr. against Becht, Columbus and Orlando. That's going to be a fun game. I think they did a great job for week one.
And so let's throw the Friday schedule up here. Again, that week one matchup is a Friday night game between Birmingham and Louisville. It's interesting if you look on the Friday night schedules, the first 4 games of the season they gave to new teams. Louisville and Columbus both have 2 home games those first 4 weeks. With those all being night games, I think they're really hoping that they can get the fans out for those games.
Yeah.
Prime time Friday night games, really nothing to compete with. I think now that we've looked at this Friday schedule, let's dive into the individuals, because the individual game that first week, Louisville, I got to looking at Louisville's schedule. And I guess what I'm going to preface what I say by is the fact that what's kind of was givens as far as I'm concerned, it's a given that Birmingham is going to have a quality team. I think it's a given that the DC Defenders are going to be a quality team, well coached, defending champions. A lot of their main core roster is back. You got the Dallas Renegades. The last couple of years, they got this King of Spring, Perez, as their quarterback. I look at Dallas as being a quality team. When you look at Louisville's schedule, they start out with Birmingham and Orlando. They play Orlando twice. Now, when you think about Anthony Beck, you can say, okay, he never won the big one for St. Louis. I'll give you that. But each and every year that he was coach, St. Louis always had a quality team. Maybe not a championship team, but they always had a quality team. So if you're Louisville, you're starting off with Birmingham and the Orlando Storm twice. You got to figure that Coach Beck is going to give them all they want. But then they go through a 5-game stretch starting on week 4 with the Renegades, where they play Dallas twice and they play the DC Defenders twice. And to me, that almost qualifies them as the most difficult individual team schedule that the league has.
Is this the up-to-date one, Ed, or am I mistaken?
This is the up-to-date one.
Okay, so we just clarify. You misspoke there. I think week 4 is the Bears, and then week 5 would be the Renegades. So.
Yeah. So.
Both Texas teams.
So, having said that, I think that Louisville has been really thrown. I don't want to say thrown to the wolves, but I'll say thrown to the wolves. They've got a very challenging schedule. Is that just me, or what's your guys' thoughts on that?
When I went through the schedules briefly today at work after they got released, it kind of stuck out to me that it was going to be tough for them. Again, you've got a lot of new rosters. You've only got so many pieces returning to certain teams. Probably, and I haven't done my power rankings yet because I don't want to upset certain fan bases or whatever. Louisville could have a tough season 1. I'm hoping I'm wrong. Heck, we could all go, I guess, 5-5, and then we'd have a tie-breaking mess for the 4 teams to make it to the playoffs. Of course, that's probably not going to happen. But yeah, between the draft and this schedule, like I said, but I remember Birmingham was a long shot the first year with the USFL. The Tampa Bay Vipers was the favorite with XFL 2020, and they were totally wrong on those preseason predictions. But Louisville's got their hands full.
I'll say this to back up on your comment, Ed. I think it is, while they do have a difficult schedule, I think this is actually a good what do they call it, litmus test for almost every team, or from a fan perspective. This will be a good litmus test of what you'll see through the remainder of the season. And I only say that from the standpoint of, for the ones I have on my phone saved here, I was looking through, I don't know if there's another team besides Louisville that starts off within the first 3 weeks, or even 2 weeks for that matter, but 3 for them, where they're already having a back-to-back matchup. We've already spoken on the fact that that's, holistically the case for every team at least once through the course of the season. Most teams have at least 2, at least one. I think DC, like I said, I think is the one that has 3 head-to-head back-to-backs. But the point being, this will be a good litmus test to see how well coaches are able to adjust in those back-to-back matchups. If you're the team, for Louisville's case, for instance, if they take the loss week 2, we're going to be able to see how well they respond going back-to-back the next week. Can they, pinpoint that team's vulnerabilities and really adapt or address adversity well and come back the next week and be a better squad? That's going to be a commonality through the course of the season, no matter what team you're watching.
I give you go ahead, Ed.
Oh, no, go ahead, Brett.
I was going to say, just to bring another sport into the mix, you think about how physical and how tough and how mean football can be. And you get the jawing back and forth. You get the little extracurricular stuff after the whistle. Well, growing up as a kid, I was actually a big hockey fan, even though I was here in Alabama. And back-to-backs are very, very common in professional hockey.
Yeah.
And fellas, you want to talk about, if you were going to go to a hockey game and it was a back-to-back weekend, you wanted to go to that second one because there were some things that happened in the first game that the other side wanted to get sorted out the next night. So back-to-back games might be a good route to really breed some animosity and make some rivalries,
That's a respectable argument. I would concede that for sure.
So let's go to the next another new team, the Columbus Aviators. They start out with Orlando and DC, and then they got back-to-back games against Dallas. That's their first 4 weeks, and then they have back-to-backs with Birmingham in weeks 8 and 9. Again, we're going to find out a lot about Columbus those first 4 weeks as they play 4 quality opponents. And and KJ, I don't know enough about Houston to speak intelligently about Houston, so that's where I kind of need you to pipe in. I'm going based off of last year, and I know Houston was a very quality team last year.
Mm-hmm.
But as I go through these schedules, for some reason I just keep thinking Houston is not considered one of the powerhouses. Am I wrong for thinking that?
I mean, that's usually how it starts every year. I'll commend and once again graciously affirm and show gratitude towards Brett for his grade that I think he gave in one of our previous shows for them for the post-draft grade. I think that was respectable and honestly lacking any form of bias. Still, I didn't even grade them that high, and I'm a diehard fan. But I did have them kind of middle of the field, if you will, in terms of the grade I did give them.
Yeah.
That being said, I think to your point, Ed, they just, for whatever reason, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it. Most people would attribute it a lot of times to coaching, and I can't even argue that factor because out of the attributes that I reviewed and evaluated on, that was their, that is their Achilles heel, if you will. That being said, I do think they kind of get the short end of the stick when it comes to preseason view and biasy, if you will, and kind of just, prove to us that you can do it is usually the general fan stereotype or animosity that's put to Houston.
So Brett, we know that the Aviators were the Michigan Panthers roster, and so one would have to assume that Columbus is going to be a quality team, but they have the great unknown of the new head coach with no experience. And so what's your initial thoughts on Columbus in their first 4 games of the season?
One thing I think that Rapoli once again did a good job. I got to quit complimenting him, or somebody's going to think that we're like lovers or something. I just feel like there's so many unknowns this season because the most players that you could keep or protect was 12. So yeah, you get your core of players, the fans are familiar with from Birmingham and in Houston or DC or whatever. But then you've got all these new coaches. I mean, the only returning coach from that particular city is DC.
Yep.
I think when it comes to the other 7 teams, there are so many question marks. Ted Ginn probably being an ex-wide receiver at Ohio State and the NFL, I imagine he's going to want to open the offense up a little bit, which is, not exactly what their core competence was, at Michigan under the last regime. But there's still a few signings to go, for each team.
To parry that comment, Brett, to your point, if that is their strategy, they at least, I can give them a small pat on the back with, some of the guys they even stole from our, alumnus squad of Houston of 2025.
Right.
They picked up Chisholm. They got Jalen McClendon, and I think maybe one other one that I'm blanking on besides one of our offensive linemen who's pretty prominent too. So I mean, they've done.
I think defense is going to be tough, and I think like you said, I think they're going to open it up some. They've got a daunting schedule. Again, there's so many question marks with all the teams except for DC. I think, unfortunately, we all know what we're going to get out of DC for the most part. There's still a lot of different roster guys, but there's a lot that's also come back from last season, and they finished last year so dominant. I mean, I would have never guessed that they were going to run Michigan out of the building like they did up in St. Louis. That was unexpected. They were fire hot at the end of the season, and they're going to be something to reckon with. Columbus, man, I'm excited. I'm excited for what what they're bringing. But again, I don't know how you're going to do power rankings other than, going off the draft until we get closer to the season.
So let's move on to the third new team, Orlando Storm, coached by Anthony Beck, moved on from the St. Louis Battlehawks. Looking at their schedule, I got the impression that they better start fast.
Yeah.
Because after that, first 3 games, the next 2 out of 3 weeks they're playing Birmingham. And then they finish the last 3 against Dallas, DC. I mean, finishing against DC in the last 2 weeks of the season, they better be in playoff position because that's a hell of a week 9 and 10 to have if you're fighting for your life to make the playoffs.
Right.
So,
and for the most part, Anthony Beck, he built the team from the ground up. I think he only this is the original Brahmas roster, correct?
Correct.
He only protected 6 of those guys, if I'm not wrong. Now, he stole a couple of good pieces from Birmingham, which I know he did from a lot of the other rosters. But I was kind of surprised he didn't protect more of those guys from San Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, probably of note, again, one of the biggest players that he didn't protect was Anthony McFarland. And I know Anthony McFarland is an injury risk, but the guy is a game changer. And Birmingham getting their hooks in him, the rich just keep getting richer because that's the great question that I have for Anthony Beck. If I ever get a chance to interview him during the year, I'm going to ask him that question because I'd really I'm sure there was a reason, but on the surface, I'm not seeing it.
I saw a comment John David said earlier. Yeah, I'm going to try to make it to St. Louis. I'm going to try to make it to Louisville. I don't know with my job situation. I had a bunch of upheaval with work last year, and I'm traveling about 3.5 hours a day back and forth to work. So I'm going to do the best I can to come to St. Louis, but I really want to go to Louisville as well. So I'll see if I can get Jay on a plane.
So here's the next one. Let's do St. Louis. I look at St. Louis schedule and I'm like, boy, Coach Prohl, he's a little green behind the ears too. This is his first head coaching opportunity. He was a wide receivers coach for the Battlehawks a couple years ago. So he basically brought back the same wide receiving core that they had last year. So he's working with a group that's very used to working together. So they should be able to hit the ground running. Silvers is going to probably odds-on favorite to be their starting quarterback. So I look for good things, but they better be ready to play because the first 5 games, DC, Dallas, Birmingham, DC, Orlando. I mean, and then, by the time it gets to be week 10 and they play Dallas Renegades in week 10, that could be another matchup that's you're either in or you're out. So, any thoughts on the Battlehawks?
Well, you know what I'm going to say. Same thing I said privately. And it was funny, me and Marty and me and Jay was talking about it the other night. I said, watch them end up making Birmingham go back to St. Louis again this year. I said, if they look at the previous year's schedule, it was St. Louis's turn to come to Birmingham, but magically that didn't happen. And, of course, Birmingham's headed back to St. Louis, which, it is what it is. That's a very, very tough place to play. And they played a fantastic game last year, if you guys remember, and the crowd played a big part in that outcome. So to me, it's a little bit of a favorable schedule for St. Louis. You think, but of course we don't know until you get all these players and these teams together and they start, progressing, gelling. I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm almost afraid to ask KJ's opinion because
Why would you be afraid to ask my opinion? I don't have any.
Okay. Well, okay. All right. Go ahead.
He thinks I'm going to go off on a tangent of hating on Battle Chicken fans, and that's not the purpose of this. No, the biggest thing that sticks out to me, and I saw this was brought up on some other, I think, X-Feed threads and even some other shows that I've watched throughout today who have already kind of touched on the schedule. And I don't. The reason may have already been mentioned, but it was missed on me. So I apologize if I'm just ignorant to the fact here. But there's their week 2 game, April 7th against the Renegades. For folks that haven't minutely checked the calendar, that's not a weekend. That's a Tuesday night game, I believe. And so I'm curious what the logic was there. To Brett's point, if it was just purely a conflict of scheduling, so they had to pick a weekday, following into the next week or whatever.
That might have been that 5th game that they were struggling to find a date.
The other part of it too, I guess, when you really get into the nuts and bolts of it, looking at the calendar, I mean, that's going to be in that sense, that's going to be a shortened week for St. Louis. They're on the road. Thankfully, they get to come back home, so that's kind of a saving grace factor, I guess, if you will. But I mean, we still are operating in the general operational structure of a hub system, if you will. So they're not staying in St. Louis all week. They're still having to fly to each game, no matter whether it's home or away. So I say all that to say their true window of practicing between those 2 games is going to be the shortest of any team all season.
Yeah, that's true.
And going against the Stallions is not an easy second game in that kind of back-to-back setup. So I think that'll be interesting to see how they respond on a shortened week of prep time, especially for the Stallions.
Well, if you listen to the Stallions fans, we're going to be pitiful this year anyway, so they won't have no problem.
Prior to the schedule coming out, I had both fingers crossed that St. Louis was going to be playing in Louisville. And when the schedule come out, the first thing I did was flip to St. Louis, and I looked. Yes, sir. April 30th. It ends up working perfectly because it's a Thursday night game. So Mama Bear and I will drive down to Louisville on Thursday morning. We'll go to the Thursday night game, and then we've got Friday. We've got Saturday. And we'll drive home sometime on Sunday. But you talk about the distillery tour, that's going to be me. I'm going to come home with some bourbon that weekend, that's for sure.
Yeah, I've unfortunately got personal demands that are going to greatly restrict my number of Houston games I'm going to get to attend. But to your point, Ed, I was excited to see, my fingers crossed, we're on, really wanting to make a genuine effort to try to visit more of the road games, if you will, or hit up the new teams' venues. And they've got I think that Week 9 setup between Louisville and Columbus. They're essentially on staggered days, so KJ is going to probably be making a Week 9 road trip to hit up 2 games in back-to-back days there for both of those teams. So that'll be exciting.
So, Brett, you say you want to jump in a plane and go to Louisville. Why don't you jump in a plane and come to St. Louis?
I do that.
That's where you really need to come.
But then, like KJ said, they don't have to deal with a lot of Battle Chicken fans.
Hey, they got.
I can't say I haven't been in jail in Missouri yet.
I don't know squat about Louisville and Columbus when it comes to tailgating scenes, but St. Louis has got some good tailgating food. I'll give them that. So you'll be well.
Oh, I bet Ed goes all out.
Yeah, he's well prepped. So
I do not suck when it comes to tailgating. Let's move on let's do DC. Brett, what's your thoughts on DC schedule?
Screw them. They're going to be good anyways. DC's going to be a problem for everybody they play this year. I truly believe that. I was glad to see that they're coming back to Birmingham this year like they're supposed to be, because we were in D.C. last year. I just hate that Coach Holtz is not going to be here to try to give a little bit back that happened that first game last season, but that's all right. We'll be all right. I'm definitely looking forward to that Friday night game in Birmingham. You always got to look at their schedule and mention what we've already mentioned, and that's the Battlehawk games. Those are always typically must-see TV. They just seem to hit a little harder, a little bit more intense, a little bit more jawing in between plays. And, historically, the last few years, they've been 2 of the better rosters. So it's definitely probably the best rivalry, in spring football right now. Then the last game of the year, you got the Storm coming in with Anthony Beck. You wonder, is Orlando going to be fighting for a playoff spot in that game? I thought Beck had a pretty good draft. I think he did a really good job in St. Louis. He did not get over the hump in the playoffs. We are all aware of that. But and again, if you look, isn't that a back-to-back game with Orlando?
It's back-to-back with Orlando, and they've got a back-to-back with Louisville the 2 weeks before that. So,
Louisville's got a tough schedule, guys. and you know what? They might, even their uniforms are probably, I haven't seen them yet, but probably going to resemble the Tampa Bay Vipers from XFL 2020. And you remember Tampa they were loaded, and when COVID or whatever you want to call it shut down the league, they had to shut it down. What was it? I think Tampa was 1-4, something to that effect. Now they were improving; they were fun to watch, but they just got off to such a slow start. I'm hoping, real quick, for all the teams and for the league's sake in general, we're trying to add fans to all these different corners of the U.S. And hey, I just wish we would have at least 1.5 scrimmages, full contact scrimmages before the season starts this year. Because if you notice, the brand of football gets a lot better about week 3. If you guys have noticed that, it does every year. The first week or two is real slow and kind of muddy, and just not everybody's quite on point yet. That's something I think Rapoli and David Dykman and Russ Brandon, all those guys need to. We need to have a full contact scrimmage, full scrimmage, at least one with each team, and I think the quality of play will drastically improve quicker than having to wait till week 2 or 3 to really get things running in order.
You're definitely not wrong there.
Yeah, in 2023, I went out to DC, drove that. You know, it's funny when you drive from St. Louis to Washington DC.
Oof.
When you go there, it's like that with even any vacation you go on. The trip there always seems like it goes fast.
Mhm.
When you come home, oh my! It took us an hour and a half just to get out of downtown Washington D.C. Then alone get on the road to head home. We had the mistaken impression that we were going to try and drive almost straight through coming home.
Oh,
Hell,
yeah.
we didn't. We stopped in Pittsburgh. So so the one thing I was hoping that they would push the DC Columbus rivalry a little bit to get established, because I know that when we tailgated in DC, I mean, they don't allow tailgating, but we found a lot close to the stadium that you kind of nonchalantly did. You just couldn't go all out. But while we were tailgating in DC, we ran into a lot of DC fans that makes the drive regular from Ohio. So I mean,
Wow.
so I was interested to see what they were going to do if they started scheduling right off the bat 2 games home and away with that fan base, what that would do. So it's kind of a bummer, but I'm sure it could be different next year. But
One thing I do have to mention real quick about DC before we move on to another team, Ed. I've seen a lot of DC Defenders fans bring this up on X and on Facebook today. They don't have any night games now. Now, of course, it's different up there. It's not like Birmingham or Memphis on a Sunday afternoon. Those people, it's just different up there. But I was a little disappointed they didn't have 1 or 2 night games up there. I mean, they'll still have the beer snake going. They'll have good crowds, but they missed out on at least giving them 1 or 2 night games.
so let's go from there. We'll save Houston and Birmingham for last, because these guys are diehards. So we'll let them wrap
One,
it up.
One note I'll just throw out there that you can add to your list you wanted to ask coaches or greater league staff. Or this one would be coaches, but Ed, for DC, I know we haven't talked about it much, but it's made its moves around X. Coach's decision to, I think, drop, what was it, 6 players? I want to say it was all defenders, but Brett, you can correct me if I'm incorrect there. Kind of out of the blue, they had released, I think it was 6 different players off the roster. So just kind of a question of, what was the intent behind that? Was there reasoning? That would be interested to know, I'm sure, for a lot of DC fans, let alone other fans of the league. So
Kind of makes you wonder if they were kind of undecided on coming back another year.
There's no telling. It could be other reasons, but it would be
Either that, or as the NFL started wrapping up, there might have been some NFL teams that released some of the players they had protected. So that allowed some of these teams to
reconsider who they picked up.
Yeah, drop some of the bubble players to bring some more well-known players on. That could have been too. Let's move on to the Dallas Renegades. KJ, I'll let you take it.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking off the rip, obviously, if you want to schedule to start strong on, this is probably one of the more preferable ones you'd want to get, just from a home slate kickoff of the season. 4 of the first half of the season is nothing but home games for them, so I think that's very advantageous. The back-to-back matchup with the Aviators, I think, is also in their favor, because you can just kind of automatically assume at a conservative element that they'll go 500 between those 2 games. The Battlehawks game, I think, will be a good one, but that didn't come till week 2, and then really it's a question mark. I'll concede on how Houston starts off on the road week 1 out the gate. That every team, as Brett said, will be looking to try to find their footing and get established. So really, I mean, that's where your prime real estate exists for no matter the team it is, even DC, for instance, to get a quote unquote get upset if they're the expected or Vegas odd betted team to win. So I think their start off of the season is definitely in their favor. I think even obviously being on the road to close out the season isn't the most preferential. But I think that that game against Louisville is one they could, make a contested play for a playoff spot. And then as Brett's kind of touched on with some of the other teams, going into St. Louis, I think, Renegades very much will probably be one of those teams that ends up on the fringe. And we're looking at, the closing 2 to 3 games of the season, determining where they sit in the overall seeding of the league and standings. That's the big one for me. I wish, honestly, I would say part of me would hopes that, Houston, we would get 2 stabs at Dallas, just once again, like you touched on, Ed, to bolster the rivalry.
Right.
But, it wasn't in the cards this year. And I'm okay with that completely. So
Dallas better get it while the getting's good.
right.
4 out of the first 5 are at home, and you look at those 4 out of the last 5 on the road, and that includes, Birmingham, the Defenders, Battlehawks. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dallas better. They better
start strong.
At least be 3-2 the first 5 games.
Agreed.
So let's move on to Houston, and I'm interested to hear KJ's thoughts because I had a couple things jump right out at me, and I'm kind of curious to see whether KJ comments on that. So go ahead, KJ.
Oh, for me, I'd say if we have to be on the road anywhere, I definitely am grateful and happy that it is for Dallas. That's the one thing, say what you will about the fan bases and their struggles in past seasons. But Houston fans will, without hesitation, travel up to Dallas to go to a road game, much more so than they would to any other more distant destination. So I think that's helpful for us since we don't get a home game to kick off the year. I am disappointed. I know that we've already covered this with regards to like the holidays. Some of it's just logistically unavoidable, but I do hate the fact that our opening home game is on Easter weekend. That kind of just takes the wind out of your sails, especially against Birmingham. But even I was over here last week saying I want to play Birmingham earlier in the year, and I think the football gods heard my prayer and said, "Here you go, KJ." So we're getting partially what we wanted in that respect.
Yeah, that was one of the comments I had is, when you look at, what was the big thing? A couple of the big things that we always talked about on last year's schedule that we really think hurt some franchises. Both Easter and Mother's Day, they got the memo because they only put 1 game on Easter, 1 game on Mother's Day, but both of those games are in Houston. The Mother's Day game is Sunday night. It's a 6:00 game, but for Easter, there's only that 1 noon Easter game on Sunday that Houston's hosting. The rest are on Friday, Saturday, and Tuesday. Mother's Day, Houston hosts the 6:00 game on Sunday, and the rest are on Friday and 2 on Saturday. So they did make some strides. I just kind of wish that maybe they wouldn't have put both of those.
Yeah, I think to your point, that is something they should have been more, if they could have been. Obviously, we don't know the ins and outs the schedule demands, but it was frustrating to see that part. I think the other thing too, we didn't touch on it when we were looking back at the Friday games, but while we may have one in terms of being a part of a Friday game, we were one of the I think it was only 2 teams that didn't get the hosting opportunity for a Friday night game. So we're not the home team on any of the Friday night matchups, and I think that's true for us and one other squad. I forgot who it was visually, thinking back to that slate, but that's a little disappointing just because you want the variance in your overall kind of day positioning of the games. But that being said, I like the fact that we've got more home games up front than on the back end, just personally speaking. I also think, personally for me, while DC has a difficult schedule, if I had to pick how many back-to-back, if I knew it going in we were going to have these back-to-back matchups, I would say it almost behooves you to petition for as many of those as you can get, because it as long as your coaching's what's the right word? mediocre, I guess, is for lack of a better term, or sub on average, you can at least guesstimate or gamble on the fact that you're going to be 500, through the course of the season, which, we haven't had a problem going that high. It's a matter of getting past the playoff threshold has really been our struggle point in the past season. So it'll be interesting to see. I like the fact, at least, that we've got, to your point, the difficult games, DC on the road, St. Louis on the road. Those are at least spaced out. We play the Battlehawks twice. Obviously, that's kind of the one back-to-back, but we get them at home on the second game, which I definitely think is the way we would want it to be if we had to play them head-to-head in back-to-back games. Really, the hard one's going to be, I think, to that point, playing Birmingham on the road at the end of the season, and the DC game on the road are probably the two biggest ones, I think, for us that, in my eyes, are highlighted as probably the hardest fought games we're going to have to win if you want to talk about games that are, the biggest stacked cards against us. So
in 90 to 100 degree weather in that last game, mind you.
Very true. Very true. It wouldn't be any different if it was in Houston. Brett, you know that. But
yeah, it won't affect you guys.
And you'll be interested to know, KJ, that I got a very interesting phone call today. And let's just say, for my backdrop, by the time the season starts, I am going to have a very nice, let's just say I'll be able to represent the Houston Gamblers rather well. So I'll leave it at that. And I'm really looking for, I've been online trying to find flags for Columbus, Orlando, Louisville, and so far I can't find flags anywhere. So,
they are hard to find sometimes. It feels like it's one of the sad points, I think, to your point, I would say critiques, if I had to give it for merch variety, is probably that, amongst hats being the other big one for me. That just always seems to be a hot seller. And we have a few, but they're lacking. And then I think, polos is the other big selling item usually. And there's not a lot of those in the shop presently as it sits. So,
well, Robert, thanks for joining.
I think for me, I'm excited for, like I said, I mentioned before, my schedule's kind of packed at the beginning of the season, but I am excited with me reviewing my own personal calendar. I think I'm going to be able to make the Orlando game May 10th in H-Town, so I'll be down for that game. Outside of that, I haven't committed 100%, but that may be the only home game I make, unfortunately, this year for the Gamblers, but I will try to probably fit in at least one or two other road games if scheduling allows. So,
okay, Brett, we're going to go on. We're going to move on, and we're going to talk about the Birmingham Stallions. And if you want to set the stage for the season, if you want to go ahead and take your shirt off for this segment, you can.
Well, I've got a tank top on.
So AJ's staring straight at you, man. He wants to hear what you have to say.
Well, AJ,
but he's got that look on his face like, be careful.
don't fuck it up.
Be careful.
AJ, I commended you all over social media for the draft, and you got to give him credit. To me, Birmingham won the draft. To me, I don't know if you'd say convincingly, but he really, and I thought he played at Bama for a few years. He was in the pros for how many years? The kid knows talent, and but he did better than what I anticipated. He truly did. I was quite impressed, but I still got to give the edge in the power rankings, to DC right now for obvious reasons. The thing that jumps out to me at this schedule, which I knew the first two games were going to be on the road again this year for events that's going on at Protective already that was already scheduled, so I knew that. I'm extremely excited to be Louisville Kings' first game up there in Louisville, opening night. That should be a lot of fun. All that being said, we've got a loaded roster. Meaning the Birmingham Stallions. I am worried that, let's talk about the elephant in the room. AJ's not coached. He's been around some fantastic coaching, and from what I gather, he is surrounding himself with a really good collection of folks. Like Bear Bryant said, surround yourself with people smarter than you. So I hope AJ is doing that. They should release all the coaching staffs here pretty soon, complete coaching staffs. But the first 3 games on the road is tough. It's very tough, especially with a new coach. Like I said, I hope we get a full contact scrimmage in so we can try to, knock off some of the rust. And there will be. I mean, we had Skip Holtz for 4 years, and now we've got a brand new guy here. So, and then the last game in that road trip is in St. Louis, which is the toughest place in the league to play. If Birmingham can somehow get home 2-1, it's going to be a really good sign. 1-2 wouldn't necessarily be very good. It wouldn't be, because then you got Anthony Beck coming to town. Now that's going to be a fun game though, because Anthony Beck and AJ's got a little bit of history.
Yeah,
and
2 out of the next 3 weeks, a home and away with AJ and Beck are going to have a chance to get to know each other real well.
Yep. Well, that's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Both those guys are not going to want to lose those games, so there's probably add a little extra in there. Birmingham, I really like the home schedule. We always want more night games, but thankfully, our fan base, I grant you, they're the whiniest bunch out there. I had one message me this morning, and right off the bat, well, they screwed us again, and I said, why is that? And he started going over all these scenarios. I said, look, Shane, I said, with all due respect, every city's got 5 or 10 events going on every weekend, and the excuses, it's time for the excuses to stop and us show up, or we know what will happen. But overall, I think they did a really, really good job considering. I know it's a struggle. I know that's one of the most trying things they, again, have to deal with is the scheduling aspect of this. I like, the Gamblers coming to town the last game. Renegades come to Birmingham. The Defenders come to Birmingham. Now, of course, some reason, again, we got hosed and we got to go to St. Louis 2 years in a row, but should be a fun, entertaining game. I'm very excited. I hope AJ has them ready. Come kick off. They're only in camp, 4.5 weeks. It's not a lot of time for a brand new coach, and he's not the only one in the league that's brand new. So we'll see. But the schedule's not easy. But all you got to do is make it to the playoffs. All you got to be is one of those 4 teams out of the 8 to make it to the playoffs, and then it's anybody's game. So I can't wait for the season to start.
I'll say this to Brett's credit and to AJ's kind of quote unquote saving grace. If I was going to be a green thumb coach coming into a league, I definitely would want to be a part of the team or leading the team that has an established culture of, winning. And that's exactly what the Stallions have. Like, it's a different world with the Aviators and with, I guess
Louisville.
Yeah, St. Louis kind of has that, but for Louisville and the Aviators, it's a barren landscape, if you will, or a barren canvas to paint upon. So the pressure is going to be higher there. I think it is high for AJ, no doubt. But when you've got that culture established, you've got a large percentage of your player pool returning that know that culture, it's a lot easier to get people back kind of into the quote unquote swing of things. So.
Yeah, that weekend in Louisville, I also failed to mention the weekend the Battlehawks are in Louisville. The Kentucky Derby is that weekend as well.
Oh, wow.
So so there's going to be a lot of people in Louisville area for that weekend. So all those distilleries and all those wineries are going to be hopping after that game. I mean, they couldn't have, the one thing I got to give the schedulers credit for is, as Brett alluded to, these venues that they're using, especially, the soccer stadiums and whatnot. Let's face it, spring football is second or third in line for availability. Last year you saw the first cracks with San Antonio losing a home game because of the the NCAA that they had there. It looks to me, even though they had to go to a Tuesday and a Thursday or whatever, they made a concerted effort to make sure every team got 5 home and 5 away. So you don't have that built-in advantage like last year. I know that the St. Louis getting 6 home games last year was a sore subject for a lot of teams. So got to give them a pat on the back. It's not an easy thing to schedule.
No.
And so we're not going to do power rankings yet, huh, Brett? Are we going to save that for next Wednesday?
Yeah, I'm just I'm going at it real softly with what do you call it? Kitten gloves, kitten whatever.
He learned his lesson from me. That's the thing. Brett doesn't want to walk out on the plank and hang himself, so that by the end of the season, if AJ totally shits a brick and he ranks him so high, then he has to go, oh crap, now KJ can haze me for the next 3 years because I made a horrible power ranking.
Well, thankfully, there's so many new pieces on these rosters, and there's 3 new teams. Even though I've analyzed the draft pretty thoroughly, so to speak, I don't want to throw some of these new teams out there, at 6, 7, or 8, and put any negativity out there for obvious reasons. I might have 1 through 4, and then just have 5 and 8 as a tie until we have the first week or something.
And really, if you think about it, you made a good point earlier, Brett, that really till you hit your stride in week 3, week 4, you really don't get a good idea what these teams are going to be. So any kind of power ranking you come out with before then is just a way too early stab in the dark, because there's so many intangibles. I mean, there's so many variables, from coaching staffs to players to where the games are played. I mean, there's just so many things.
Yeah.
You're really not going to see what a team's made of till they got a couple games under their belt. So
you hear one of my little Panthers is hollering out. She's wanting Michigan back sooner than later. So I need to get with Rapoli on that.
Trying to convince you to be a Columbus fan, huh?
No, she ain't having it. She wants her Panthers back.
So any parting thoughts before we call it a wrap?
One thing came to my mind thinking about it. I was curious what y'all's thoughts are. We touched on the scheduling difficulty, or if you will, roadblocks, whatever the term you want to use, with respect to obviously not being the top tier choice of each team's selective venue that they're playing in, but to be more like flip-flop and devil's advocate in a good way. Do y'all think that Rapoli will make an effort to really utilize the almost, I guess, automatic advertising platform that you have within those venues? As you said, I don't know when exactly the MLS season starts. I would imagine it's before ours does. Knowing that, I guess, you think there's some knowledge or thought process in the upper heads' minds to say, hey, let's try to cannibalize some of those corresponding fan bases. So it's like, hey, you're already coming here for these home games, just come check out the UFL football game for the same venue's team or whatever.
Yeah, I just think that goes, without saying. And that was one of the problems with Ford Field. Not only were they busting them at the seams with what they were charging, they were refusing to use their marquee and their internet platform to advertise when the Panthers were playing, and that's
that makes no sense.
Yeah, that screw them in so many words. That's I mean, you got somebody paying you $500K a game plus this and plus that, and you're not willing to just type up a few things on the marquee and on your X and Facebook pages and Instagram pages. I'm surprised the league hung in there at Ford Field as long as they did, because I knew every season it was a fight on whether or not they were going to come back or not. It's unfortunate because Michigan was building a fan base and they had a good team, but hopefully they'll be back in 2028.
gotta give Mike Rapoli a little credit though, because he's trying to engage with the fans a little bit. He's kind of been doing some good-natured ribbing with Birmingham. I saw the early schedule release yesterday where he had Birmingham playing every game at 11 in the morning.
The embarrassing thing to me was the amount of people that actually fell for that crap. And I'm like,
your phone blow up when that came out?
bro, I said it to Marty last night, and poor old Marty, I love him to death. but he is just so naive, you can even believe anything. And I thought to myself, within 30 seconds, my phone gonna ring. In 15 seconds, and he's like, God, this is horrible. This is worse than last year. I said, Marty, did you read my post? No. I said, well, you never do. You just look at the pictures. I said, you're like a kid. Read the damn post. I'm like, I said, it's fake, bro. It's fake. And then I get a message back. Well, I hope that's not real. And I thought,
I'm reading your text, oh Lord.
I hate to out him like that, but damn. You ought to have seen some of them. There was people almost getting personal with Rapoli over it on X, and I'm just like, I could say something, but I'm not, because it would be, yeah.
I'll say this: I hope they continue to up the ante with respect to the marketing. Only because, from what I've heard so far through this new year, I guess if you will, in the off season as it still exists right now, even though we're leading up to a new start of a new season, I've only heard one fan quote the identification of an ad that was posted, I think, during one of the NFL playoff games. I forget which one. I think it may have been the Buffalo game, actually. I believe is what the one that they aired it on, the Buffalo Broncos game. I didn't even see it, and I was at a bar with a buddy watching that game the majority of the whole way through.
Well, you probably didn't see half the game then.
Oh no, I saw the game, but yeah, the commercial I may have missed on one or two.
Yeah,
minutes.
I've seen it. I've seen it a dozen times with multiple games. But we've got these fan events even in St. Louis that's coming. There was another event that was scheduled for Birmingham this Friday for just the Booster Club and season ticket holders. And they were doing the other fan thing Saturday, and those got pushed back because of the storm that we might have coming.
Right.
So
that makes sense.
So we had a rare back-to-back coming off a pretty long show last night. But we wouldn't have missed tonight at all, because it's one of the big days for the UFL, and it's always kind of the kickoff of the excitement of another season. Ticket sales are going on now, so I know there's a few tickets I need to get it in there and get bought. That Louisville game, I'm going to have to get a hold of some of my St. Louis travelers and find out what part of the stadium they're going to sit in. So, with a Thursday night game, it's probably going to be pretty limited, I got to think, for St. Louis fans. So I got to find at least one or two to sit by. So with that said, thanks again, all the UFL pages, for letting us post and share our program. And until then, we will see you guys again next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. And who knows, maybe we'll come out with our way too early UFL power ranking on Wednesday. We will see you then. Night, everybody.
And that's the bottom line.